Well, welcome to the CHEK Blog. I guess this is technically a vlog, but I always find that a really difficult word to say. So, welcome to the CHEK Blog. We're going to call it a blog. I'm back with Warren Williams today. How are you, Warren?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, like you said, we've just gotten over that crazy spending weekend in America and the rest of the world where people go crazy and spend all the money they have and don't think about tomorrow.
Yes, yes. So actually, this is fascinating. You're going to be talking today about lessons we can learn from a baby, and there's probably some lessons we can learn to apply in this crazy holiday season too.
I hope so. Yeah, I want to preface this by saying that obviously, as you know with me, I always talk about things that relate to spirituality. And one of the things that we learn about children or babies is when they're born, people see God when they look at a child. They always say that when I see a child, all I see is God because what they see is pure love. And one of the reasons why that's a reality is because when a child is born, energetically, all of its chakras or energy centers are lit up. So they're all open. And when all of your chakras are open, you're totally harmonious and balanced because all the energy systems are in flow. So when your energy systems are in flow, there's no trauma, no blockage. All you are is a pure vessel of love. And that's why, when you look at even the hardest, toughest men in the world, when they have a child, they can't help but just become softer. And, it's like if you have a child and you're walking down the road and ordinarily someone wouldn't say hi to you. As they walk past you, they smile and they say hi because they see the child. So straight away, one of the lessons that, and this isn't part of the topic, but it's kind of like just to add to it anyways, one of the lessons that we learn that a child brings about balance and love and it opens everybody up to feeling a connection to the person who has the child. And therefore, people no longer separate themselves because they feel like they want to be involved in the space of the child that's around them. So, the child itself represents balance and openness. And if it kind of allows everybody to feel like it's okay to smile and it's okay to be happy and it's okay to be playful. Every single person that walks past a child that looks at a child will always smile. They don't look at a child and look angry. They always smile. So straight away they're learning to connect to their inner child. So that was kind of like just to preface it, but basically I've been doing a lot of babysitting recently and to a newborn, and I started looking after him when I was when the baby was about 3 months old. And I've been, doing like 2 or 3 days a week every single week since then, and I've observed so many powerful lessons that I think, I want to share with people that people may not actually kind of see are actual lessons. So that's kind of what I want to go through because there's so many powerful things that we can learn from children. So let's go through the first lesson. The first lesson, and I'm going to expand on these greatly when I'm actually writing a book. So, and my book's going to be on this, and that will expand into how this ties into the chakras. But that's quite long, so we won't go through that because obviously we've gone through the chakras before. But I'll tie that all together. But the first lesson that I want to share is the lesson of selfishness or selflessness, I should say, because most of us we're so consumed, like what we were talking about with Black Friday and all that sort of stuff. So everybody's into me and what I want for myself. And that's the first thing that most of humanity learns as they grow up and they leave school. It's all about the acquisition of wealth and what I can get for myself to gratify my own ego. But what you learn about a baby is when they're born, they don't know anything about value. They don't, if you held a $10 for America, a
Yeah.
$10 note
Right.
or 25 cents, they would go for the 25 cents.
Hmm.
They
It's
wouldn't go for
shiny.
the, yeah, they exactly would. They wouldn't say, well, that's worth more than that. So they don't know anything about wealth.
Yeah.
So the first lesson on selflessness is that the first thing you learn is if you are someone who's self-absorbed and self-consumed, when you have a child, it's all about the child.
Hmm.
A child is totally egocentric.
Hmm.
And that means the child thinks that everything in reality is all about them.
Hmm.
If they are hungry, they don't care whether you're tired, they want
Yeah.
their food right now.
Yeah.
And if you need to sleep and they want to wake up, they are waking you up because it's all about them.
Mm.
You can't explain anything to them. You can't say, look, I understand you want to play, but I need to sleep. And they can't go, oh, okay, I'll be quiet for a little while.
Mm.
They can't do that
Mm.
because it's all about them.
Mm.
So you learn to become very selfless and giving because you have to, whether you want to or not, you
Mm.
have to. And again, when we're talking about these lessons, we're talking about good parents. People,
Right.
not parents that, okay, I've had enough, I'm going to abandon my child. I'm talking
Yeah.
about parents that are doing everything possible to
Right.
be able to support that child. So the first lesson that every parent will tell you is what they learn is they have to become totally selfless.
Mm.
If you're an athlete, you learn to be totally selfless for yourself,
Yeah.
or should I say selfish.
Mm.
Now, if an athlete had a child, she would learn straight away it's no longer you. You're not the driving force here. It's now about that child. So, you know, um, we learn that lesson of selflessness, and the lesson here is how can we then translate that into being selfless for others?
Mhm.
As you know, with the model that Paul CHEK uses, we have the I, we, and all.
Mhm.
So obviously, when you have a child, it's no longer I. You are now about the we, which is the child. You supporting the child. So you share every part of yourself
Mhm.
and all of your energy to sustain that person. If you only have a certain amount of money that you get every single week, and it's not enough for you to buy your clothes and to buy your fancy car and your designer jeans, you
Mhm.
wouldn't do that because you would be focusing all of your resources on that child. So the great lesson that you learn there is you learn to put something else first.
Mhm.
And most of humanity nowadays, we're talking about the typical humanity in the Western world, they don't think like that.
Yeah.
So whether they want to or not, they are forced into the lesson of selflessness.
Mhm.
And all they have to do is now translate that understanding into sharing with other people. And
Mhm.
once they can do that, they have mastered that lesson outside of what they were forced to do because of the child and into what they want to do because it's an element of growth.
Yeah.
So that's the first lesson. And the second lesson that we learn from the child is about responsibility, because it's kind of like the same thing. Because now you are responsible for the needs of your child. So
Mhm.
if you eat very bad food,
Mhm.
and as we know, when you look at a lot of parents today, if a child is obese, it most likely would be that the parents might be obese. You often see the child looks exactly like a carbon copy of their parents.
Yeah.
So we know that the choices that the parent makes affect the choices that the child learns to make, because the child mimics the parents, because to the child, the parents are God,
Mhm.
and all of the commandments come from the parent.
Mhm.
So the parent learns about the tribal association of responsibility. And again, it shifts you from the I and shifts you to the we, because now you have to become responsible for the choices. So if you make the right choices, like if your child has eczema, or if your child is lactose intolerant, you are now responsible for making sure you take care of their diet.
Yeah.
You're responsible for researching all the information necessary to give that child the health that they need. If the child is intolerant to toxins in the house, you are now responsible, because the child will mirror that straight away, because the child's immune system is lower as well. You are
Yeah.
now responsible to make sure that that child has, either high, organic cotton clothing, or, you go and get sprays to cleanse the house of toxic waste. You have to act immediately because you have to become very responsible. So when you look at a lot of these young parents nowadays that are like 16, 17 years old,
Mhm.
and all they do is have fun, and then when they get someone pregnant, or they become pregnant if it's a woman, um, automatically they have to become more responsible, and their parents say to them, right, you have to grow up immediately.
Mhm.
So, as we know, in the Western world, most people don't grow up past the age of 8 to 12, as
Yeah.
Paul often says.
Yeah.
So one of the things I always say to my clients is that people typically don't grow up, they just get older.
Mhm.
They don't grow up, they don't mature.
Yeah.
But the great thing about a child is it forces maturity on everyone.
Mhm.
So it's the lesson of maturity and responsibility. And that, I think, is an amazing lesson for a lot of people that act like children. Because as you
Mhm.
know, you see a lot of 50, 60-year-olds that have never had children, but they have their games room, and it's all about entertainment. It's all
Yeah.
about just, being a child themselves.
Yeah.
But if they had a child, it would force responsibility on them immediately, and they would mature.
Yeah. Yeah.
In spite of themselves, they'd have to mature.
Yeah.
Even the responsibility of your actions.
Mm.
How many times have we seen, again, we're talking about the correct ways to be around children. How many times have you seen parents that swear around their children?
Mm.
That sort of thing shouldn't be happening. So when we're responsible, that means we're also responsible how we talk. Sometimes I've spoken to certain parents and they say, yeah, when my child is around, I have to really think about how I talk. And then I think about, I don't want to be using slang anymore because I don't want my child to talk that way.
Yeah.
I don't want to swear because I don't want my child to learn to swear.
Hmm.
I have to start making better choices so that my child can see those choices and become what I am. So I always say to them, teach your child to become what you are willing to become yourself, not what you are right now.
Yeah.
So, all of these things, it forces responsibility in changing your lifestyle habits, changing your diction, changing your dress, changing your health choices. So it forces responsibility, which is a fantastic lesson.
Yeah. And that happens almost immediately, right? I mean, if you, as a mother, right, you start breastfeeding almost immediately, and that means
Mm,
nutrition even before you give birth, right? You have to
yeah,
be paying attention to these sorts of things.
yeah. And I've, on that great point, how many times have you seen parents, again, we're talking about good parents here,
Hmm.
how many times have we seen parents that smoke and drink, and as soon as
Yeah.
they get pregnant, automatically they find the willpower to stop,
Yeah.
but yet for years and years and years they couldn't stop, and they tell you, I can't
Hmm.
stop.
Yeah.
But as soon as they find out they're pregnant, all of a sudden they find that willpower.
Yeah.
So it forces this incredible responsibility, which is not just beneficial for the child, but it's beneficial for them. Because
Mm.
if you're making better food choices for your child, then you're making better
Yeah.
choices for yourself
Yourself.
anyway.
That's right. That's right.
And that responsibility for a child translates to you. So some people that
Mm.
aren't doing well in their jobs or only coasting along, they've only
Yeah.
just about got enough money. They're like, oh my gosh, I have to earn more money now because I have a child.
Yeah.
And it forces them to become very driven to success. So that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
from, and when some people, especially single parents, when they say, I don't understand these people that say a child is a gift
Yeah.
because it's so hard. But no, it is a gift when you look at it this way,
Yeah.
like it's forcing you to have to become more than what you are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, at the Institute we talk about the I, we, all structure kind of
Mm,
life, right, and relationships. And what this shows, right, is that in order to have a healthy we relationship, I have to have a healthy I relationship. And it really forces that on
yeah.
an individual.
Yeah, because as people are motivated. They talk about these two energies that make people go into action, either the pursuit of pleasure or the avoidance of pain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, and just to touch on that a little bit, I don't know you know this, but just to
Hmm.
touch on it just for the listeners, but the pursuit of pleasure is doing things because you like to feel the result.
Hmm.
And like some people, an example, like some people like to pay their bills way in advance because that's a pursuit of pleasure. Whereas
Hmm.
some people, the avoidance of pain is, okay, there's a red letter. I best pay this bill right now, or
Hmm.
the tax man's coming, or the bailiff's coming,
Yeah,
and they do it to avoid pain.
yeah,
Or when it comes to exercise, certain people, they don't like exercising at all, but they have to exercise because it's a rehab program and they're in pain.
yeah,
They've just had surgery, so they have to do it.
yeah.
Whereas a pursuit of pleasure for those people would be certain people that train because they love the feeling that they get from having a healthy body.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so the pursuit of pleasure or avoidance of pain are the
Hmm.
two polarities that we use. And like you said, some people are forced into doing certain things because they
Hmm.
have to. And a child is a great responsibility tool and a great checkpoint for people, checkpoint for people, for
Yeah,
people
yeah,
to become what they know they need to when they were just coasting along.
yeah.
The next lesson is unbound happiness, or as
Hmm.
Paul calls it, unbound play.
Yeah.
The great thing about it, again, some people that just aren't into playing and having fun because they're so focused on, their success and being perceived as the serious person, they become a child when they're around a child.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to entertain a child by saying, hi, you okay? The child
Yeah.
respond to that. You're gonna be, hey, how you doing? Good, 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 good. You become this child, and
Yeah.
that's fantastic because it forces you to become what you once were.
Yeah.
And like the Dalai Lama always says, become a child.
Mm.
And when you become a child, you let go of some of your stresses. You start thinking about, all the fun that you used to have in your life. And like sometimes I say to some of my clients that are going through specific traumas in their life, I always say, well, what did you do when you were younger? And a lot of them are like, yeah, there's a lot of things I used to do that I don't do. I used to hang out with my friends a lot more. I used to go paintballing. I used to go paragliding, or we used to go for long walks, and I used to meet up, and we used to just have fun.
Mm.
And the good thing about having a child is pure happiness. And
Mm.
in order for you to relate to that child, for that child to love you, you have to reciprocate the energy it's given out. You become the mirror.
Mm.
So you have to become playful. For a child to even have your attention, you have to become playful,
Mm.
playful. And the great thing about being playful is you obviously shift to that parasympathetic polarity of
Mm.
yin, that
Mm.
inner love for yourself and for the child. And any stresses that you have in your life are shifted to the back because all you think about is having fun at that moment. And when you have fun, it teaches you to go into no mind. You don't think about, you don't particularly think about what you're doing. You're just in the moment. So it forces you to become introspective because in order for you to have fun, you have to connect with yourself and just do. You don't
Mm.
become rigid and restricted.
Yeah.
So, it teaches you the lesson of instantly becoming a child if you were never doing that or had stopped doing that because you were the tough guy who doesn't have fun or smile or laugh or
Yeah.
cry or, all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's a powerful lesson and it seems like it's simple, but it forces you to melt away and
Mm.
just be what you're afraid to be.
Mm.
Um, one of the things I say to people as well is every human has a trinity within them. The
Mhm.
person that they think they are, the person people see them as,
Mm.
and then the real them.
Mm. Mhm.
And a lot of the times people project the person that they want people to see them as, like the boss who is in full control of their emotions, has no problems at home, um, is an achiever, a go-getter, has no digestive problems, no back pain, can work non-stop without ever getting tired. They project this, but inside themselves they're afraid, they're isolated, they're alone, they're in pain, but they can't project that because they're always busy being the person that people see them as.
Mm.
But when you get home, your child isn't interested in that bravado. Your
Mhm.
child is interested in the real you because that's what they
Yeah.
connect to.
Yeah.
So the child in you mirrors a child in them, and
Mm.
then they see the real you. So the
Mm.
great thing about that is it breaks that trinity that you have, that facade,
Mm.
that lie that we spoke about before. People have mastered the art of deception.
Mm.
When you're in a child, you can't be deceptive because children, because again, especially when we're talking about babies that can't speak, they are incredibly good at feel.
Mm.
So they can feel when something's wrong. Like if you argue, they can feel that negative energy from you and they pull away from you. If you're sad, they pull away from you because they can feel this negative energy. But sometimes they're drawn to you for sadness, so they try to help you and they hug
Yeah.
you. But if you're constantly angry, they push away from you. And I've seen that. So when you're just being real and loving, they come towards you. So it forces you to open up and be a loving child. And
Yeah.
then they reciprocate that. And children play with children
Mhm.
and children play that with adults that become children.
Mhm.
So I think that's a really really great lesson, the lesson of unbound happiness and play.
Yeah.
The next lesson is the lesson of giving. When I say
Mm.
giving, I mean from support,
Mhm.
because it's kind of tying into one of the other lessons that we spoke about, where most humans nowadays are they can't see beyond their own needs.
Mm.
And that's the sad thing about most of humanity in the Western world. They cannot see beyond their own needs. It's like when you talk about your problem, most of the time people are thinking about their own problems. And
Yeah.
whenever, they communicate to you about your problems, a lot of times they're actually talking about their own. When they think
Mm.
that when they're trying to help you, they're actually talking about their problems.
Yeah.
So we're so used to projecting our own problems on people because we can't see beyond our own needs. And, when you're around a child, you learn to give everything that you have. You learn to give your love. You learn to give your support, your energy, your time. Whether you have energy or not, whatever you have, you learn to give to support that child. So you learn to shift into the I, we, and all again.
Mm. Hmm.
That you learn that you have to do that in spite of yourself. Whether you're the selfish person, you cannot be a selfish person raising a child. So you learn to give everything you have. So you learn to become an outward being, and
Yeah.
that's a great lesson.
Hmm.
Um, the next lesson is something that I think is lost today in the Western world. Is the lesson of spirituality. All children, as I said at the start, are open vessels.
Hmm.
They're highly spiritual. When we see films like back in the day, Poltergeist. Do you remember that film,
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Poltergeist?
It's creepy.
And, yeah, yeah, and that little girl, and
Yes.
the spirit beings always came to her. When it had the
Mm.
TV, the static, and she got
Yes.
pulled in all sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then they had that little midget woman that was the medium.
Yes.
Yeah, do you remember? And she
Yeah.
was like saying, "Oh, they're always drawn to children because children are pure vessels."
Hmm. Yep.
So because children are incredibly spiritual, it's one of the things I always say to people that every single child, because all of their chakras are open, have you ever noticed that every child, when you come into the room, they look above your head?
Mm.
They don't look directly at you. They look at you and then they look
Mm.
above you
Mm.
because they're scanning your energy field.
Mm.
So they look above and then they smile. If you have a good energy, then they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, my child likes you."
Hmm.
It's because they've scanned your energy field. And if
Huh.
you don't have a good energy, they like, "Oh, my child doesn't like you," because they're
Yeah.
scanning you.
Yeah.
So they're spiritual beings. They're totally
Mm.
aware. And every single time you see a child drawing, when they get to the age of maybe 3 or so, and they're able to draw humans, they always draw a little rainbow around them
Mm. Hmm.
because they're looking at the energy field.
Hmm.
And you always hear you always see babies when they're playing by themselves and you just leave them and step back. Every so often you see them playing with apparently nothing, or they're just smiling, they're looking somewhere and they're just smiling. It's not like they're just talking to themselves and told themselves a great joke and they're just
Yes.
laughing at it.
Yeah.
They're actually laughing and playing with something that you apparently can't see. And it's not
Mm.
that every single child is nuts, they're all crazy,
Yeah.
but they're seeing beings, they're seeing your ancestors, they're seeing beings around you that surround you that are there, but we just block that.
Hmm.
And how many times have you seen stories where, children that, are older, maybe 4 or 5, to say, "Mom, Dad, I saw grandma who passed away years ago." And then the parents go, "Oh, don't be silly. You didn't see grandma." "No, I saw grandma,"
Hmm.
because they still have that open link where they can connect to the other side.
Yeah.
So if parents become observant, so my point here is if parents become observant of their children's abilities spiritually, they would then trust and start to accept the spiritual side through observation of what their
Mm.
child is conveying.
Mm.
Because the child, first of all, looks above you and is looking at some sort of energy field that you may not see. So that teaches you that, okay, there is something going on here. And
Mm.
then the children always saying they see some long lost relative.
Hmm.
So what's the lesson there? The child is telling you that that doorway is open and that world is real. And then children draw rainbows around
Hmm.
people. So
Hmm.
that means there's something going on there. Children play with invisible beings. There's something going on there. So, when we're children, we know these things are real. And because our parents don't believe they're real, what happens is the doorways start to close down because they think, okay, well, no one else sees this, so I'll start to ignore it. And then
Hmm.
eventually they start to get to old age and they no longer see those things, so they forget them.
Hmm.
And once they forget them, they become an adult. And then the cycle repeats itself. They have a child, and then they say to their child, "Oh, no, you didn't see nothing. You didn't
Hmm.
see anything. Oh, don't be silly."
Hmm.
And it repeats itself. So we're losing something here by not connecting and really seeing the lessons that our children are teaching us. We're losing this awareness of the spiritual realm and the spiritual connection to us.
Hmm.
So we're becoming physical beings, and we're
Hmm.
teaching our children to become physical beings by ignoring the signs. So it's a lesson of spiritual awareness
Yeah.
that child is conveying to us if we only pay attention. The next lesson is the lesson of silence. When you have a child and you're trying to get them to a sleep, you are very aware of how loud the world is around
Mm,
you. You have to tiptoe around and like if you're if you live next door to neighbors that are noisy and you've just gotten your child to sleep and they start making noise, you're infinitely aware of how loud this world really is.
yeah.
You know, you see children walking down the road and they're shouting. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to get this child to sleep. Why are you shouting?
Mm,
You know, a child across, why do you have to shout to each other? And
mm,
people walking on their phone shouting on the phone, yeah, okay, I'll be there later.
mhm, mhm,
You're like, geez, that person's making noise. Cars going by, blasting music.
mm,
Oh my gosh, this guy's making so much noise with this car. So you become really aware of how loud the world is. But as an adult, you learn to just shut it off.
mm,
You just blank it out and then you go about your way. But what you do is you learn to isolate yourself
mhm,
by isolating yourself from the sounds around you because they've become distracting.
mhm,
So when we talk about meditation, I'm shifting slightly onto this and it relates back to this subject of silence. When we talk about meditation to people and they say, oh, I'm distracted, I can't meditate because I've got so many things going on in my mind. I say to people the example of how powerful your mind is when it comes to blocking things out. So I say to them this example. Have you ever been to a restaurant? Because this is when clients say, I can't focus on one thing.
mm,
So I say to them, okay, have you ever been to a restaurant? They go, yeah, of course. How many people in the restaurant? Maybe 50? Yeah, yeah. So there may
mm,
be, if there's 50 people, there's at least two people on each table. So let's say there's 25 conversations going on. But yet you're able to have your own conversation with the person that's with you without distraction from all the other people around you.
mhm,
So that you're able to focus on one sound, which is the person next to you,
mhm,
and block out every other sound. So you already demonstrate all the time that you have this capacity to be able to focus on one thing
mm,
without even thinking about it.
yeah,
But when you have to sit down and meditate, you're now saying you can no longer focus on one thing.
yeah.
So you have that ability. And then I say to people, have you sometimes been in your house and you're trying to get to sleep or something, and then the tap's dripping? All of a sudden that one sound
Yeah,
bothers you more
yeah,
than the 50 people in the restaurant
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because you have focused on
Huh.
that one sound and allowed it to affect you.
Mm,
So it's a lesson of silence and the lesson of stripping away isolation.
mhm,
Because, like I said, without children, we learn to block out all these other sounds and just get on with our day. When you have a child, you are so aware of all these other sounds because now you're trying to get your child to sleep. So it forces you to become aware of the thing that you've been blocking out to get through life.
mm,
So it's the lesson of awareness of how important silence truly is.
mm.
And then it also teaches you to appreciate silence and how important silence is for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say I have friends who actually cannot stand silence at all. In fact, if they are absent city sounds,
Yeah.
cars and planes and people talking at night, they have a very difficult time sleeping because they've become so used to sound, and the absence
Mm.
is disturbing.
Yeah, and a lot of that as well is because a lot of people don't want to face themselves.
Mm,
Because in the silence, it become questions.
yeah,
Who am I? What am I? What's my purpose? What's my
yeah.
legacy? And a lot of people don't want to face that. So they want busyness. They
Mm,
want to be distracted so they don't have to ever face those questions. Which is
mhm,
why, as a lot of times when we send out questionnaires to our clients, they don't know anything about themselves because
yeah,
they never sat down to be quiet enough to
yeah,
actually ask the questions because life is distracting.
yeah.
So the beautiful lesson of a child is silence is golden and you
Mm,
learn to appreciate it. And
yeah.
then it makes you want to go and be in silence because now you know like how far away you are from silence. You
Hmm.
want to actually experience it, and you want to sit in nature and go to a reserve and just sit in silence. And that lesson is once you're able to sit in silence and just see the trees and you can hear the breeze and you can hear the ocean and how tranquil it is, you realize what you've been missing and how soothing it is to your body to be harmonious with Mother Nature.
Hmm.
It's a great lesson.
Yeah.
And then the last lesson I kind of wanted to go through was the lesson of flexibility. It's a weird lesson
Mm-hmm.
sound, but flexibility is, as we know, motion. We talk about doctor movement
Hmm.
of our doctor system. I always say every child is born flexible. You never see a child that can't touch his toes
Hmm.
or can't put his hand behind his head and stuff like that. Every child is so flexible and supple. And, they have no restriction, no blockages. And through necessity, we spoke off air about infant development, but the development of the child through necessity. So a child's first extension or first curvature is the neck, because when a child lays prone on its chest, it's interested in the world, so it looks up and it wants to see what's going on. So the first development of strength is to be able to lift the head and to create the curvature of the neck, of the cervical spine, as we say. So they develop that strength and they improve their flexibility because they need to see. And then if they're sat in a chair and they don't have that mobility yet, and someone's behind them, because they have that curiosity, which is another great lesson, the lesson of curiosity, they try to turn their head and rotate their waist as much as they can. So through necessity, they learn to rotate the thoracic or middle spine so they can look around and be curious and learn the lessons. And then, in order for them to be able to reach, they have to learn a lesson of flexibility in their shoulders and their hips and their pelvis. So they learn these things out of necessity, and they're flexible. And then what happens once they grow up into adulthood? They learn the lesson of rigidity.
Yeah. Yes.
They learn to
Yeah.
sit down and be still, because you don't need to be flexible to type.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then we become inflexible.
Mm.
And that's why you see parents nowadays, or people that are in their 40s and 50s, developing degenerative diseases that used to be for people in the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they have dowager's humps and they can no longer move because they don't need to move, because all they need is flexibility to type.
Yeah.
And that's sad, because like Paul Chek says as well, most of the people that are around today in the Western world wouldn't survive in primeval times because they wouldn't be able to hunt. So they wouldn't be able to click Tesco's and just go online and buy something. They'd have to physically be flexible enough through necessity to be able to move. So the lesson of the child is that they learn to have optimal posture to be able to move, to grab, they can't email you to go and get that toy. They have to
Yeah.
have flexibility to do it. And it's a great lesson because you appreciate how important flexibility is, to be able to move in every position necessary, which is what they need to do to acquire things. So, they push, pull, twist, they go for all the primal patterns out of necessity.
Yeah.
And if we copy the child and learn to maintain flexibility, then we wouldn't have all of the pains. We wouldn't have to spend thousands of pounds going to see practitioners and chiropractors and all these sort of people, because the lesson of flexibility would give us the ability to not need that help in the first place. So
Yeah.
prevention is better than cure. It's a fantastic lesson that we learn by watching the child.
Yeah.
And then, kind of to summarize it all, is the lesson of the mirror. Um, what we see in our children is what we see in ourselves. And we should, it's not just, and the lesson reflects, sorry, the mirror reflects both ways. So it's not just what we reflect to the child and what we teach the child, it's also what the child can teach us.
Yeah.
That's what all these lessons are. It's, what is the child teaching me about myself? Is it teaching me that I am too selfish because I need to devote more time to my child? And if I don't like it, even though, I said throughout this, in spite of yourself, you still have to do these things. But if you resent doing these things, what is the lesson being taught to you by the necessity of having to do these things by your child? It's telling you you're very selfish. It's telling you you're very materialistic because you resent not being able to buy that fancy apparel because you have to feed your child. It's teaching you, if you don't like spending time having fun with your child, it's telling you that you have some unmet and unresolved issues within yourself where you find it hard to just melt away and become happy. If you don't want to give support to your child, it's telling you a very powerful lesson that your your fourth chakra is stuck in pushing, not receiving. If you're someone that finds it hard to have spiritual awareness, it shows you that you're closed down. And one of the reasons why you're in pain is because you're not understanding that a lot of your pains are mirrored in your emotions, and the emotions connect to your cells, like we spoke about in one of our other talks.
Yeah.
And those cells are traumatized because you're unwilling to accept the connection between emotion and physicality.
Yeah.
If you're not, if you have joint restriction and you can't move, the lesson that you're learning from the child is out of the need for more flexibility.
Yeah.
So the overall summary is the mirror has to refer both ways. And a lot of parents think they cannot learn from their child. They always say, what do you know? You're just a child.
Mm.
That tells me a lot more than,
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
else. You
Yeah.
don't realize the child is the lesson.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well, so this is really great because what I'm seeing in some ways on a deeper level is what you can learn from your child is balance, right? Because you've
mm,
got life balance, because you've got these interesting yin and yang elements in the lessons that you were talking about, right? So the yang of responsibility, right? And structuring my life and making sure that I do all the things that I need to do to be there.
mm,
And yet the yin side of unbound play and of appreciating silence and spiritual awareness, right? So you've got this, this balance of yin and yang and all of those lessons. And so if you pay attention, that's probably one of the great things that you can get out of it.
yeah, that's I'm so glad you said that, because
Yeah.
that's kind of like the overlap of everything. I'm so glad you pointed it out, the ability to balance yin and
Yeah.
yang in those lessons. So yeah, that's all I got for you. That's all I kind of wanted to kind of summarize, and I'm so glad you said that, because that kind of put a cap on the whole lesson.
Well, it's fantastic, and I don't have children of my own, but even as you said, you learned a lot of these lessons through babysitting, and certainly I've done that for my nieces and nephews, and
Yeah.
when you reflect back on that, you can certainly see those lessons. You get the taste of them.
Yeah, you see that you're actually being taught something. And like, we always talk about simplicity, and sometimes these lessons, it's like, okay, if you are taught a lesson but you don't pay attention to it, you don't see it as a lesson.
Mhm.
So it's like, like
Yeah,
Karate Kid, the classic Karate Kid film,
yeah,
wax on, wax off. He
yes,
didn't realize he was being taught a lesson
yeah,
until
yeah.
whatever his name is, I've forgotten his name here,
Miyagi, right?
Miyagi, until
Yes,
Miyagi threw the punch at him, and he's
yeah,
like, oh,
yeah,
now I'm paying attention that that was a
yeah,
lesson.
yeah.
And that's what we're learning with this stuff with the child. If you don't
Mm,
see it as a lesson, that I didn't learn anything, I just knew it was hard.
yeah,
If it was hard, you learned a lesson that it was hard and why.
yeah.
So it's fantastic. The beauty of children is amazing.
Brilliant. Well, and I love the final. You may have learned the lesson, but you haven't realized it. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you, Warren. This was really enlightening. I always look forward to our interviews because it's such a different perspective on these issues. So thank you so much.
Once again, I'm so honored to be able to share this stuff with the CHEK family and for all people that are into health and well-being.
Great. Well, let's do it again soon then.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Right. Take care, Warren.
Ciao.